record, I speak in the name of my ancestors, the goddess of my country, Esli Duntal, the father of my country, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, my grandparents, Sayou and Eugenia Mocombe, who taught me the way of my ancestors, and in the name of all the ancestors who fought for our liberty. This evening, this forthcoming book by myself, Paul Mocombe, Dr. Carol Tomlin, Dr. Victoria Shuonmi, is titled Jesus in the Streets. The loci of causality for the interracial gender academic achievement gap. The book is titled Jesus in the Streets because it's technically a structural Marxist analysis or framework for understanding or conceptualizing the black-white academic achievement gap. Again, the black-white academic achievement gap is an empirical problem that dates back to the 1940s. Essentially, African-American students in the U.S. Score at least one standard deviation below the mean score on any standardized test vis-a-vis their white and Asian counterparts. So essentially, when black students enter school and they're tested, they score below the mean, one standard deviation below the mean score when you compare their scores vis-a-vis their white counterparts and their Asian counterparts. Now, this is the problem that's not only rampant here in the U.S., but it's also a problem in the U.K. Hence, to understand the problem, in grad school, I developed two theories. One titled The Mismatch of Linguistic Structure and Social Class Function. So essentially what I argue is that the reason for the academic achievement gap is grounded in the linguistic structure of African Americans as well as the social functions tied to the to African American English vernacular. That means the reason why inner city children, blacks in general, underachieve vis-a-vis their white and Asian counterparts is when they enter school, they're basically foreign students because the structure, the linguistic system of the school is standard English. And what I argue, building on the work of William LeBeau, is that African American English is its own distinct linguistic system. So when African American students enter school, they're basically foreigners. So, and the evidence for that is when they enter school, right off the bat, there is an achievement gap. But that gap closes by the time that young African Americans get to the third grade. So what I argue is their matriculation and socialization in the school system basically they get they familiarize themselves with the linguistic system of standard English. So my argument is, by the time, if you structure the school system based on, if you teach African Americans based on language arts phonetically, that gap will close automatically. However, by the time they get to 5th grade or middle school, that gap widens again. So when they enter school, the gap closes. By the time they get to middle school, it widens again. And the argument, the second component of my argument is the reason why that gap closes is because they are socialized within the systemicity of standard English when they enter school. So by 3rd grade, they close the gap. So because they're socialized in the linguistic system of school. By the time they get to 5th grade or middle school, my argument is the gap widens again because of the social functions tied, or the social class roles black play in the society. Meaning young blacks, especially young black boys, more so identify with athletes and entertainers because of the systemicity of their linguistic structure, and therefore they don't place an effort on education. they're more likely to want to succeed or achieve status, economic gain in the society through entertainment and through athletics. So, that being said, my argument for this book is that what we have to look at are the ideological structures that reproduce the capitalist system. This is why the book is a structural Marxist analysis, or a structural Marxist framework for understanding, conceptualizing, and contextualizing the black-white achievement gap. In order to do that, you have to take a structural Marxist approach to the gap, to understanding black socialization within the systemicity of the American capitalist social structure of racial class inequality. So what I argue is that in the socialization of blacks within the society, the ideological apparatuses of the society, you have to remember the church, the black church, is an ideological superstructure, as Louis Althusser points out, not about the black church, but about the church in general. Education is an ideological superstructure. It is in place to reproduce the capitalist society. This is why the black church promotes prosperity gospel within the capitalist system. In this sense, I'm a Weberian. I believe the church is an ideological structure put in place to reproduce the capitalist system. In fact, being a Weberian sociologist, my argument is that the capitalism is an offshoot or a byproduct of the Protestant ethic, as Weber points out. So what I'm arguing in this book is that the church, Jesus, using Jesus as a metaphor to represent the church, is an ideological superstructure, and the streets are also an ideological superstructure. Be that as it may, the reason why there's, again, and I have to go back, there is an intra-racial gap as well. Black boys tend to do poorly vis-a-vis black girls when they're in school. Black girls are more likely to achieve academically more than their black male counterparts. And the reason for that is the purpose of this book is, as I argue, as myself, and Dr. Tomlin, myself, and Dr. Shu and me, what we're arguing is that the church, the reason being is because black females are more likely to achieve their status, or to achieve status, economic gain, as well as upward mobility within the church. The church, which is dominated by black females, are more likely to push black females to achieve academically over white black males who are less represented in the church. However, the ideological superstructure where black males tend to be socialized the most are the streets, as well as we could have titled this not only the streets, but we could have titled it the football field, the basketball field. We could have used any of these metaphors, because what we're arguing is that black males are more likely to achieve status, upward economic mobility within on the streets, which is an ideological superstructure, as we argue in this book, athletics, and the entertainment industry. So on the one hand, you have black females who are overrepresented in the church, which pushes them to achieve economic gain, prosperity, and status via education in the church, where they're more likely to be involved as prophetess, evangelists, what have you. In the streets, where black males achieve their status, economic gain, and upward mobility. And again, a caveat, the streets, as well as the athletic field and the entertainment industry, could have served as the working second metaphor in this case. So for us, both the church and the streets are ideological superstructure that, on the one hand, the church is enabling African American females to achieve. On the other hand, the streets are preventing young black males from achieving. Now, for me, both are problematic. Why? Because the church should not attempt to reproduce a capitalist system that threatens not only humanity but life itself on earth. In the streets, again, we know the detriments of the streets in reproducing the capitalist system, what have you. So for me, both the church and the streets are problematic. They're both reproducing a perverse social system that threatens humanity and all life on it. So whereas, you know, Dr. Tomlin may, being a pastor, may favor the church because it helps close the achievement gap. It pushes females. So on the one hand, the logic should be, oh, let the black males attend church, and maybe then they would become more successful. But if you look at it, young black males who achieve economic gain via sports, the entertainment industry, they eventually go into the church. Like I like to call them, they become Jesus freaks. You look at Michael Irvin, many of these athletes, once they achieve fame, status in the society via sports or hustling or entertainment, whatever, many of them become church members and assume a status position that says it's okay to achieve status and economic gain via these things. And for me, that's problematic because it's paradoxical. We're telling young black boys, like if you see the LeBron James commercial, to get an education, but LeBron, went straight into the NBA without a college education. So for me, both the church as an ideological superstructure to reproduce the capitalist system as well as the streets are problematic because they're both reproducing the perverse way of life. So what's the alternative? The alternative for me is simply, number one, the church has to assume its role as a place to tie human beings to the unknown, the spirituality, not to reproduce the capitalist system. And for me, we have to make that distinction. The church as a place to connect humanity with the universe, as opposed to an ideological superstructure in place to reproduce a perverse social system that threatens humanity with global warming, etc. In the streets, well, we all see the adverse effects of the streets, so we need to move away from the streets as well. So whereas I, on the one hand, view both of these ideological superstructures negatively, and it has a negative connotation in the title, but on the other hand, Dr. Tomlin, being the pastor, she views it totally different from the way that I view. So on that note, I will end and take any questions.